Thanks, Dave. And thank you, everybody, for coming to this event. It's just amazing to look out and see so many people in attendance. So, as John said, to our partners, thanks for helping build our business over the years, and to our customers, thank you for investing in us, both money and time. And hopefully we make it worth your while. So my session, I'm going to talk a little bit about the need for IT agility, what's going on, and then we'll start bringing up some customers as well, an internal one, and some external customers too, just to give you different perspectives of things that we're talking about, and really trying to bring it home with some real situations that are going on. What are things that we're seeing out there in terms of the overall marketplace? Probably stuff that you're experiencing either with your customers or within your own companies. Lots of changes going on, right? We have people trying to solve their needs differently. It's moving from a big blob, introduce something, deploy something for a specific problem or a specific business need, to more give me flexible resources that I can reuse over time for different applications, different parts of my business. So the focus out there on the CIO and the discussions that we're having with them are really evolving over time. And what we're trying to do from a product standpoint, and really making it easier for people to solve these problems, is give them the right tools to be able to answer these challenges. Give them these strategic points of control that will help them build networks that really answer the call time and time again, without having to redeploy, rip stuff out, keep building things over and over. So that focus is shifting. So what are some of the trends that we saw in this year so far? As John mentioned, of course, data centers are reshaping. Every conversation we go into with people with multiple data centers, they're saying, hey, we're consolidating. We're using some of the tools that are out there, whether it's from VMware or Microsoft or what have you. We're taking lots of data centers, we're bringing them down to fewer, and we're using virtualization tools to make those larger data centers as efficient and flexible as possible. And while they're doing it, they're trying to make them as cost effective and consume the least amount of power possible, save on cooling and everything else. And of course, virtualization, right? Who isn't using that? A couple of years ago, you go out and ask people, and they would say, hey, we're experimenting with it a little bit. Maybe we have some test or dev apps that we're experimenting with and using virtual tools or virtualization tools to get there. Today, it's commonplace. And really the only question is, how far into your sort of core apps do you go, and how much of those are virtualized? And it's pushing all the way down right to the database tier. So very common. Obviously, you're probably all experiencing that. Cloud stuff, coming along, right? We're hearing more and more people. It's sort of the same discussion that people had with virtualization a few years ago. Hey, I'm testing it out. I've got some apps that I'm going to try it out for. Sort of the tip of the iceberg measurement, if you will. There's an outfit out there called Jack of All Clouds, and they try to measure cloud adoption. And they take the 500,000 busiest websites in the world, according to data from Netcraft, and then plot those against where those sites are hosted, and does this every month. And basically, the bottom line is about 1% of those sites are truly hosted by cloud providers, and that's really dominated today between Amazon and Rackspace are the two. So 1% clearly early adoption, but it's evolving every day. The clouds are becoming more capable, answering more of people's needs. About 85% of the main cloud providers, when you look at Gartner's Magic Quadrant out there, are basing their services and their infrastructure on F5 products too. So for us, with our partners and customers, what we want to be able to do is make it easy for people to use as much or as little of the cloud as possible without having to invest in new architectures internally. So we'll cover more about that as the session goes on here. And of course, social media, right? That's taken off a lot, and we're seeing organizations embrace it internally to make it easier for their employees to communicate with each other and to communicate with the outside world. So for us, probably one of the most the most visible place that we use social media is with DevCentral. And with the re-architecture that we had this year, with DevCentral 5 being launched, you saw a much more sort of community-driven social media flavor to DevCentral. And really that goes back to just us trying to give our customers and our users the best tools possible to be able to collaborate and share expertise out there to better use F5 products. So that's happening in external places like DevCentral. It's happening in internal places, and I'm sure that's occurring for you too in your businesses. So more things going on from that perspective. Mobile exploding, right? There are iPads around in the room and phones and all sorts of stuff. So that's just becoming a common way of accessing applications. I mean, worldwide, especially when you travel outside of the US, that is the way that people access the internet and information out there. So we as businesses, when we're delivering our content, our applications, and trying to satisfy users out there, have to be thinking about that crowd and how do we satisfy them in particular. And I think now we're over 1 billion devices out there, and that's just growing more and more every year. So certainly that's something we all need to be thinking about. And then Dave talked about IT spending growth, and it's growing, but there's still a lot of the spend that's dedicated to just keeping up, right? So how to keeping up with my infrastructure, just keeping pace with growth, and you have a relatively small percent of it that's pointed at forward-looking efforts to better support that next piece of your business that's coming along. So again, from our perspective, we want to think about that and give people the best tools possible to make the most out of those budgets that they possibly can. All right, so those trends are all coming along, and let's think about what does that mean? How do those translate into 2011? What people are telling us that they're thinking about in the next year or so? So first off, as I mentioned, virtualization is mainstream. We had sort of a thought leadership roundtable session at Networld and Interop last April, and one of the people there was from an airline actually, and he said, if it doesn't move, we virtualize it. And then he thought about it again. He said, well, maybe if it moves, then we virtualize that too. So just thinking about things like vMotion and sort of what's going on in people's data centers, but clearly it's mainstream, right? So people are looking for tools to help simplify their lives as they're virtualizing the living daylights out of everything possible. That's more and more things to manage, stuff is moving around, it's more complex from a networking perspective, and they're looking for ways to simplify that. Cloud, hot, right? That's coming along, and people are deploying it internally. They're looking at how they can seamlessly move stuff out to external cloud providers to take advantage of some of the cost efficiencies there, but do it without sacrificing control, do it without sacrificing security, and also complying with regulatory requirements that are applicable to their particular business. So again, people are looking to make it as easy as possible to adopt those things and also not be locked in to a particular provider. So those are some of the questions and asks that we get from the marketplace in terms of how can F5 help me address that trend as I look at things like cloud. Mobile workforce, of course, continues to grow like crazy. Whoops, button to work. Social media in the enterprise, talked about that. That's going to be even more mainstream. So even some of the things, you think about some of the tools out there, for example, with Microsoft, their SharePoint product probably has been one of the most successful products that they've launched that doesn't sort of get a lot of headlines about it. But it's really sort of a social media tool. I know inside of F5, when it came into our building, and maybe we'll talk about this more with John Mathews when I interview him later, but it came as part of a developer's kit that our developers work with, and they just sort of slapped a SharePoint site up, and lo and behold, everyone sort of embraced this thing. It spread like wildfire internally, and then became sort of a main application that our IT group had to deal with because of its success internally. And that was just sort of a symbol. It was a great tool that made it easier for us to collaborate with each other to get our jobs done. And I think the social media in the enterprise is, we're just going to see more and more of that. And so whether it comes under the label of something like SharePoint or some other, Facebook-y type of thing or Twitter or what have you, that's going to become more and more prevalent inside of all of our businesses. And we've got to figure out how do we embrace it, how do we harness it, and how do we make sure that it doesn't injure us in some way as well. So people are looking for tools to help with that. That infrastructure spend keeps going. There's a lot of cool stuff being released every year. I mean, this year, all the great things that are coming from Microsoft, all the 2010 versions, Exchange, SharePoint, all the communication stuff, everything else. That's going to take a bite out of people's infrastructure spend. And that refresh is something that's good, it's necessary, but again, people are looking for ways to be able to be as efficient as possible in terms of being able to deploy those new services and do it efficiently. Okay, so we're all getting to expand our vocabulary this year and next year. Things like petabytes and yottabytes and zettabytes and all this sort of stuff is going to become mainstream for us. I was at a cloud conference in the Bay Area a couple of weeks ago, and it was just amazing how many times people mentioned those words out there in terms of just measurement of the amount of data that's going to be thrown around across whether it's sites or the internet or consumed and video and so on and so forth. So that wave is coming, right? We know that we're giving people the tools, the bandwidth to be able to consume and generate that, those volumes of data. And it creates some very interesting challenges for people out there. They're just labeling the big data problem. So on the database side, for example, there's one case study from Australia where the Department of Highways wants to do real-time speed limits across the country. And things that enable them to do that are sensors to be able to figure out how fast the cars are going are becoming really, really cheap. They can backhaul all the data that those things are generating via Wi-Fi and the cell systems, the mobile systems. But it generates this tidal wave of data that they've got to crunch in real time to be able to figure out what the speed limit on any particular road ought to be at that point in time. And they recognize that if they don't do it quickly enough, they can cause all these compression waves and all sorts of other things that would actually make the traffic snarl. The decrease in expense of things like sensors, the ease with which you can backhaul data, and then the tools that are available to be able to consume and manipulate and digest all this stuff, it's going to make it really easy to make high volumes of data out there very possible and commonplace. Right, so we'll see that just in the U.S. Right now, 2008, 14,000 terabytes crossing the internet. 2013, 36,000 terabytes. That's probably, I think, maybe even a little conservative in terms of looking at what's going on, especially when you think about video. Right, on a couple of weeks ago, we had a session out in Boston, and we're flying on Alaska Airlines, and they had free Wi-Fi as a trial service. And we had a whole bunch of our development crew on the plane, and what's the first thing they do? Try to figure out what's the most extreme thing they can run over this Wi-Fi network. So they were trying to stream video. They had video conferences going between people on the plane and people on the ground, encrypting it all with our Edge client running over SSL. So anyway, so it's sort of back to the, if you give people the tools, they're going to figure out how to fill them out. So streaming video, that's tons of it is coming, so we've all got to be able to deal with it. All right, so the point, and what we'll talk about more over the course of the session and the interviews that we'll have coming up here, is that sort of the old way of doing things. When I had a new problem, a new business process, a new business unit that I had to deal with, I'd sort of set up this one-to-one relationship, right? I've got users, they connect to the system, I sort of plumb everything from a one-to-one relationship. That causes problems over time, and it becomes very, very complex, and it's not efficient. So, gets more problematic as users start to roam around the globe. They're using different devices, and how do I organize all this stuff? So it's a problem that's been around for a while. And you've got services that you need to deliver to those people, whether they're security or optimization or just general availability stuff. So as people are moving around, you're trying to configure all this stuff, it can really turn into a nightmare. Right? And we don't want that. We want to try and make it easier for people. So that's the infrastructure side. We think about the users trying to interact with that stuff too. They're changing. They're in different places, different countries, using different devices, having to log on and for every different app that they touch. As I'm deploying more software as a service stuff for HR or what have you, it becomes a real pain in the butt for people. So that's another thing we've got to figure out. So, when we think about that and this idea of understanding what's going on, this context is something that we talk about. So having the network be smart enough to figure out who is the person coming in, where are they coming from, what are they using, which apps are they trying to access, and then applying all the right decisions and policies to make that work seamlessly is something that's going to be really, really important as we move forward. And we're referring to that as this idea of a dynamic services model. So how can we give people these strategic points of control so they can build out their network to deliver these services, and they can reuse them across the next app that they deploy, or the next business unit that gets spun up, or the next acquisition your business makes. That's really what we want to do, is give people that flexible infrastructure. And that infrastructure should be able to provide all those services. Security, optimization, high availability, make it all manageable. So that's really sort of the big idea that we're thinking about in terms of our product vision and stuff that Carl will be addressing here later on this morning. That's what we're trying to do, is give people the tools to be able to reuse things, not have to code stuff in the application over and over and over again, but do it once on the network. Amortize that work across all the applications, and that's a lot more efficient. It's easier to control as well. And then, in terms of cloud and virtualization and everything else, take that infrastructure and make it reusable. Right? So whether you or your business are sort of traditional 3-tier type of architecture, or all the way out on the other end, we're just adopting cloud stuff like crazy, make sure that F5 has something to address your business needs anywhere along that spectrum. So for us, wherever you are in that evolution, we want to be able to help you out. And again, not have to reinvent the wheel or rip us out and replace us with something else. So whether it's from a traditional enterprise architecture all the way up to hardcore cloud adoption, we've got you covered all the way. And we want to be able to make that that infrastructure on demand for you. So have it behave the right way for the right types of conditions. So that's really what we're driving toward. And then, oh, by the way, make the end users happy, right? So again, whether they're on the bus, the plane, or what have you, connect easily, make it seamless, satisfy all your security requirements, and at the end of the day, deliver them the information that they need to get their jobs done. Right. So again, evolutionary, as you're deploying virtualization within your data centers or adopting cloud stuff, these products from F5, strategic points of control out there, help you do as much or as little as fits your business needs. So what we'll do in the next session, so again, strategic points of control, you hear us use that more and more. You guys are laughing at me over there. So the idea is be able to deliver the agility with these strategic points of control. And what we'll do in the next portion, I'm going to invite people up, and we'll cover each one of these topics out there. So how do we meet users' needs? How do businesses manage and scale in a growing environment? How do you secure stuff in a changing environment? And then throughout all of it, change is constant. So for the next portion, I'd like to invite John Mathews, who is our CIO at F5, up on stage with me. And come on up, John, please. All right.
tired right now? By the way, I just got to check in on that. Okay.
It's
going to get a little bit more exciting, a little more energy flowing. All right.
I don't recognize you wearing a jacket.
And nice pants, too, no jeans.
Yeah, exactly. And shoes, too, so that's good. Things are looking up. All right, so Mr. Mathews, this is your life. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
So I understand prior to arriving at F5, you actually had some other experience out there that may even be mildly applicable to what we do at F5. So let's explore that a little bit. So prior to F5, your last stop was MSN,
yes,
right, in Ops. And so tell me a little bit of what did you do there?
I was a business manager for MSN, and we were buying and building data centers by the bucketful at that point in time. Everything was about trying to get the infrastructure larger. The growth at Microsoft is ridiculous. I can't even describe for you guys how much they have to purchase, how fast they have to move. And so I was the guy running a lot of the decisions behind that stuff.
Cool. And prior to that, you had your own business?
I ran a consulting company for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I ate what I killed, I guess is the line, right? So I was constantly on the hunt for clients and customers.
And before that, graphics side?
Well, I grew up at Aldous Adobe. So I started at Aldous a million years ago, and actually on the phones and customer support. And then I ended up in IT somehow, I think through the phone system, actually. Some guy went on sabbatical. I took his gig for 3 months, and then I stayed in IT and ended up being director of IT there, and that's sort of where I grew up in technology.
Cool. And then also another, probably very little known fact, probably nobody in the room other than me may know this, but so John's a bit of a character internally. One of the things that I know you reacted really, really strongly when in the news, all the stuff about Goldman Sachs in the past week, and the no swearing in email thing came out, right?
Yeah.
So John, usually we have a standing bet that have him get up on stage and do a presentation without cussing, as you say. It's a bit of a challenge, right?
Dan has cussed at least 3 times since he's been presenting to you guys. I'm just going to try to keep it very mellow.
So anyway, so we'll extend the challenge and see if you can make it through this one, right?
You guys, this isn't scripted, by the way. We didn't rehearse our little banter.
Yeah.
So please don't think that this is scripted.
Yeah. So I'll try. And then the other thing is that if John does get a little weird on us, he was in high school a lacrosse goalie.
Yes.
So took many shots to the head.
Yeah. Pro picked up.
So, all right. So, okay, so let's talk about, so what do we have at F5? So let's talk about our infrastructure a little bit, so give people an idea of what you run into and what you have to deal with your team.
So put the numbers slide up here. So you guys, we're not a huge company. We do have 50 offices worldwide. The 820 server count on here is actually just the physical servers. There's also a ton of virtuals on top of that. We have a lot of storage that we manage. I'm going to talk about how much I love ARX at the end of this, and I want you all to listen, because for the customers out there, the people who have my gig or gigs like my gig, the IT leadership, it makes your life suck a lot less. It really helps a lot. And for the resellers out there, it's something you should be talking to all your customers about, because it really has helped my life immensely. So there's the layout of what we sort of have. I got to tell you guys, in watching all these presentations today, I see all this new technology, all this mobile stuff that's coming, and how great it's going to be. And there's a part of me that just goes, oh God, it's just a ton of work, right? We got to make all that stuff work in IT, and it's not always as easy as the marketing guys or the sales guys would have you believe. And so I know a lot of you live this reality and live this life, but it's definitely a challenge, and I know we all face. So anyway.
So let's talk about, so it's a challenge that we face, and come on, it is just as easy as we say.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So let's talk about life inside of F5. So we're in high-tech company developing products. You've got hundreds of people that have pretty strong opinions on how you ought to do your job and roll things out. So let's talk about the how it is and certain demands on your team. All right. So what's going on there?
Again, the customers in the room who are IT people, you guys get this. I think all the resellers get this. I think everybody gets this. There's a lot of tension between what my end users want and what I can actually deliver for them. And the constraints on that can be a million things, whether that's time or money or personnel. But it also is, also there's a lot of drivers inside the business that make it hard. So you guys saw all those great slides where John and Mark showed that whole upward momentum on revenue and people and all that other stuff. Okay, that's all pain for IT, right? I got to be agile because the company's growing like crazy, which is a great thing. I'm super excited about it. Oh my God, the company's growing like crazy. I don't know how the hell I'm going to handle that load. And that's a constant stress for us in IT. New users coming on, the business is going fast as all get out, and we're trying to put the technologies in that will support the business. Again, all that mobile stuff. Dan wants to get on his bicycle and run his laptop and go ahead and do stuff on his way to work, and I have to figure out how to do that securely for him, right? And so there's a tension between all the things that the suits, I didn't make these slides, but I kind of like that the suits want, and what we can actually deliver in IT. And I think some of the stuff that's cool about F5 technology is that it allows my organization, and I think will allow a lot of your organizations and your customers' organizations, to be able to do these things in the pace that they're able to operate in. Some companies are able to go faster, some have to go slower. That slide, the big spaghetti slide that Dan showed with all the traditional infrastructure, most of us are still in the thick of that, and we're not going to change to some nirvana world where it's all cloud connected and I can instantly spin up servers anytime somebody wants them. That stuff's not going to happen tomorrow, right? It's going to happen eventually, and we sort of have to figure out how we're going to get there in steps. So one of the things I've been encouraged about with the product plans and the direction that Carl has taken us from a technology perspective is that it allows my organization to nibble off those technologies as we're capable. If I can create some free time for my staff to be able to innovate, because most of our time, frankly, is spent just keeping stuff running.
So do you think that 80-20, is that fair for you?
I think the 80-20 is it's fairly good. It might be, depending on the week, could be 95-5, right? And so you guys all live in this world. That's the reality. So anyway, there's a lot of pressures on how we're going to actually deliver these new capabilities, and it's a key part of what I do every day.
Right. So how many top tier or number one priority items do you have? How many pages long is that list?
So this quarter, our number one priorities, there's 20 of them, although there's 3 on backlog that if they get approved will actually move into the top 16, which is actually 20, which will be 23. And there's no way I can do them all. Stuff's going to have to come off the list. It's the same dance that we all face, right?
Just make sure you do mine.
Yeah, I know. You and every other exec.
Yeah. All right. So what about you talked a little bit. We'll talk more about ARX later, but some of so uptime and the different data centers that we've got and software as a service and so give us a little bit more flavor on sort of what's going on there in the background.
Okay. So first off, I think there's probably as many definitions of the word cloud as there are people in this room. I've heard very heated arguments amongst my staff about what actually is the cloud, or is the cloud new? But cloud is something that we're exploring very heavily. We obviously have SaaS in our environment. We use, I'm not supposed to say company names. Can I say company names? I don't know the rules for this stuff.
There are no rules.
Okay.
Just
we use Salesforce. We use Salesforce.com. That's an important business tool that we use. We also, we host our Oracle off-site. We have other people help us take care of that. So some people say, well, that's cloud. It's not really cloud. I don't know what it is. It's just the way IT business has developed over the years, right? And so that technology is coming more. Hit the next slide here for us so we can see the little, is that the circle one? Say please. Please hit the next slide. There we go. All right, I needed my notes. I can't even read these over here. There's a little bit of a script over here, but we haven't been looking at it. I'm supposed to summarize some of the problems that everyone faces. So you guys all live this life, right? First off, the end users want all the cool stuff right now. My boss will walk off the airplane with his copy of Wired magazine and tell me we've got to get some of that cloud stuff, right? I have to contend with the driving needs of the business. I still have to keep all the systems up, right? And I really have to keep the systems performing. I can't stress enough how much performance is it's almost more important than uptime. You know, I'll have my technical people argue about what is uptime and was the system down or was it just unavailable? Well, it wasn't down, it was just unavailable. Well, that's still down, you dummy. So those kinds of challenges are something that we all face. I obviously have resource constraints to contend with, and the most important one on this list, and let's not pretend that this is not the case, it's not budget, it's not people, it's time. There's not enough hours in the day to do all the work that all of your customers and all of you have to do every day in the IT arena. So as we face those time constraints, that's the balancing act that we face. So security is obviously huge, and politics is just part of the dance, right? We all have conflicting priorities that are given to us. So there you go.
Cool. Okay, so time for another John Mathews little known fact.
Oh dear.
His very odd dietary habits. In fact, one of his favorite things to eat, and this will probably gross a few people out, is come on,
it's going to be great. Dog food.
Dog food, yeah. So what do we mean by that, right?
So you guys know what dog food is? Everybody hip to that term? Dog food is basically we use our own stuff. So I have several folks on my organization who do dog food in the alpha phase and the beta phase of products. And then obviously we dog food almost all of our production technologies in some degree or another. You know, today our newest code is running on the second and third floor of our Seattle offices. That's where developers live. And Carl wanted to make sure that his folks were running across the stuff that's a little bit scary to make sure that it actually works. It's a little bit of a self-motivator. So we try to use all the technologies before they end up in your hands and in your customers' hands. That can be a little bit of a challenging process. I will tell you that my team is not the most delicate when telling someone that their baby is ugly. Those can be a little bit of hard conversations. But the ultimate goal there is to make it so that what lands in your guys' laps is more stable and is more directed towards the areas that we know IT people care about, right? It's got to have good documentation. It's got to actually do all the things that the marketing people say it's going to do. It actually has to do those things. It has to be capable of installation, right? It has to work out of the box, and I have to be able to do stuff with it right away. So dog food's a big part of what we do.
Yeah. So in the dog food program, what has been sort of the thing that was sort of the most pleasant surprise over the past year or 2 years?
I'll tell you, our biggest success, as far as I'm concerned, was one of the early ones where we played with APM before it arrived to the market. And when we first put it into place, it didn't really work like we thought it was going to work. And it was a very set of painful conversations and painful emails from my less than decorum-laden staff to folks in Carl's organization. And they really hurt us. And when we got the next version back, which was like a month and a half, 2 months later, all of the things that we were so bummed out about that weren't in the product when we saw it were actually there. And the builder worked, and the installation worked, and it actually did, the top 20 things that we really cared about the most were in the product. And it made it a much better product for you guys before you got it, but it was also a great foundation for a really positive relationship between IT and product development, which, there can be some strain there, and that really went well.
So you guys kissed and made up.
Yeah, we did, actually. And it's actually good.
Good. So you get to experiment with stuff. I mean, everybody in the room, market-wise, pretty familiar with Big IP, LTM out there. So let's talk about what are the things outside of LTM, other than LTM, that are sort of the best kept secrets.
Okay, so
what should people know about?
You have to hit the button so they can see the yum.
Oh, yum.
Yum.
Yeah. All right.
I'm glad they put that in. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about data solutions first. This is our ARX product set. I think file virtualization, are we using that term anymore?
Yeah, sure.
I like the term intelligent file management. The short story long here is that storage is expensive. It's a pain in the ass to take care of.
Ding!
Right? And I've been doing really well. It's very difficult to take care of. I was having a turnover problem with my staff. I couldn't get backups completed. They were taking like 4 days to get done. I was having to constantly just buy storage. So basically I was walking into my boss's office, who's the CFO, who doesn't like to spend money, and I would hand him a bill for a lot of money every quarter that he had no choice. There's no choice. We're buying this. We have to buy this or we're done. What I was able to do is I was able to put the ARX into my environment and just implement the tiering feature. And with tiering alone and buying low-cost storage to have my tier 2 stuff moved to, I was able to save a ton of money and a ton of time. We have a rapidly growing storage problem at F5, and every single one of you has a rapidly growing storage problem, and every single one of your customers has a rapidly growing storage problem. And so ARX really allowed me to buy myself a ton of breathing space. The backups that were taking 4 days are now taking like 3.5 hours, because I'm only backing up the stuff that I actually need to back up. And I'm able to use multiple vendors. I know we've got NetApp in the room, but there's other storage vendors on top of it. NetApp is one of my key ones, but I have a couple other ones that I use as well. My ultimate goal there is I need to have negotiating power with NetApp, and I need to get the best deal from them, but I also don't want to put all my eggs in one basket, so I spread the load a little bit among some of the other providers as well. So that was a really, really big win for us on a lot of different fronts.
And then what's cool from a user's perspective is as you've got lots of critical data, like my music collection and pictures and stuff like that, as you move that around, I'm just still accessing it in the same place.
Well, that's one of the key things. You guys know that in IT, we like to sort of hide the ugly parts of how things operate from our end users. That's a key part of our goal. This allows me to do that. I have this sort of ARX little Potemkin village in front of what's going on in storage land. My customers don't have to know that I'm swapping storage around, or that I'm putting a different vendor in, or that I'm spinning up another data center. It doesn't matter to them. Their files are still where they think their files are, and that's all they need to know about. So it makes me have a little bit of that whole, Wizard of Oz curtain thing where you don't get to see what goes on behind.
So how about the security stuff?
So Edge and APM and ASM. These technologies are actually what's going to make all that crazy mobile secure stuff happen. I'm using them in a bunch of different places inside of IT for our customers. We're dogfooding them on several areas. We're getting APM put onto DevCentral right now. There's been some bumps and grinds with that, but again, that's really positive because we're trying to get smarter about how we do it. But the security stuff is paramount to what we're doing in this industry, right? The BlackBerries and iPhones and iPads and wireless connectivity and airport computers and all those kinds of things. Managing those connections for my customers is a nightmare. Managing those connections so that they're secure and I can apply my security policies to them is a nightmare. And making sure that I can report on that so when the chief counsel asks me a question, I can actually answer it in some sort of cogent fashion. Make sure I've got Sarbanes-Oxley stuff covered. These technologies actually help me be able to do those things. And that's block and tackle, boring stuff of IT, but frankly, we all live in that world. So this is a key part of how I'm sort of being able to move forward.
Cool. Awesome.
Are we doing good on time?
Yeah, we have 2 minutes.
Okay. Oh, wow. Look at that.
Tons of time. So we also have, so the next things, we've got pictures of sort of the top initiatives. Maybe just real quickly a few words on a couple of them, things that you're thinking about.
Well, I'm kind of curious from the audience. I don't know about you guys. When I saw this top 10 list, I didn't really know that this was necessarily my top 10 list, right? There's a couple things on here that jumped out. Obviously, cloud computing. Advanced analytics. I'm not really sure what advanced analytics is, but I sort of took that to mean sort of business and technology analytics that I can use to manage my business. That's a key focus area for me. Security is obviously a huge area. We're investing very largely in it inside of IT at F5, and every place I know of is, the Ace Hardware guy was telling me that that's a huge focus for them. Everybody I know is very, very concerned about security. Mobile applications is probably the most yin-yang or dichotomous challenge that I face, which is that I'm really excited and really pumped about it, and I'm also horrified and terrified about how I'm going to actually be able to support all these crazy sales guys who want to run around the world and do everything on their handheld device. I don't quite know how I'm going to do that yet. Some of the F5 technologies actually help me, again, be able to nibble at how I'm going to solve that problem. Because I have to balance what it's going to cost me to do it, how much value it's going to bring to the business, and where it fits on my top 16, which is my top 20, which is my top 23 list of projects, right? So those are sort of what I'm saying.
Assume we're shooting for 30 next year.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, always up and to the right. Yeah. Okay, so, and then just sort of wrapping up in terms of this summit, some of the things that you wanted to get out, and I think it's pretty representative of most people in the room, right?
This is what you guys all want to do, right? And free beer, I think, is also key on the list, if you're Robert Frank. Yeah, I want to talk with y'all. I want to hear about whether the problems that I'm facing are the same problems that you're facing. I'd love to talk with you about some of our hiring solutions like APM and Edge and the AirX, because I'm kind of very, very, very excited about those product sets and can pump you up about them. So anyway, that's all I got.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'd like to thank John for joining me up here.